All right, so up next, let's talk about the bear. Let's actually talk about the bear because yeah, we were supposed to talk about season 2 last year, but we never got around to it. But I did put it there. I did mention it actually as one of my favorite shows, well, favorite TV seasons or whatever of last year, right? And yeah, well, Ricardo, you actually put me on to the bear, so I kind of came in a late. I came in right when season 2 ended, so I watched both seasons at that time. Absolutely enjoyed the show, right? And if you don't mind, I'll just do a quick run through of what this season was about, right? But yeah, The Bear, courtesy of FX, is this comedy drama series. It's centered on this restaurant that was formerly known as The Beef. But
Yeah,
now it's The Bear. So they in addition to serving beef beef based sandwiches and whatnot. Yeah, they also serve like gourmet dishes, right? Bougie food and whatnot, right?
right,
But what this show really explores too, well, for one thing, it's set in Chicago, right? I mean, perfect setting, right? It's this whole it's basically the post-COVID climate when it comes to restaurants and just
right.
businesses in general, right? They could be there for a while, but due to some kind of like financial turmoil or whatever, yeah, these businesses could shut down, right? And what would the employees do? Um, Especially those who feel like they're just skilled in one thing, right? So in the case of this show here, you have characters like Carmen, Bazzato, who's played by Jeremy Allen White. You
Mhm.
have Sydney, who's played by McGill Ayo Edebiri,
Right.
and a bunch of other people who work at the beer, right? Who just feel like, yeah, this is all I do. Cooking is all I do. I'm a chef. That's my life, right? And they feel like there's nothing else out there for them, right? And it's just the relatability of the show, right? And just
Yeah,
how real it feels, right? Yeah, that what makes this show so captivating to watch, right? And it's emotionally captivating as well. There's a few um gut punches that show up ever so often, boy. And it's just the raw reality that you see here. Whether it's well from the acting to the dialogue. And yes, when it comes to dialogue, boy, it's just the way how they come with these eloquent ways of saying fuck is something about how
okay.
they curse in this show where it's just so I don't know, it just amuses me how they write these characters, right? And yeah, just how relatable a majority of them are, right? But at the same
Mhm.
time, they are far from perfect. They are flawed. Sometimes they are
Right.
assholes, sometimes they're just bad for the sake of being bad, but they are real people, right? It's not like they're just out there to like torture people or be nihilistic, but they are real people, and you could tell like even when
Yeah, and
characters
it's a
act a
person.
kind of way, it's because of the
Yeah, yeah.
world, or the lives that they live and whatnot, right? So it's
I'd
like
always
that.
like to think of this as some kind of weird spiritual sequel to Chef, the movie.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's because all of our plot is in this. That is why it's big way thing. But what it does also, it's very metatextual in that sense because it have a
Mm,
bunch of homages to other like chef movies, actual chefs guest star in the show.
yes.
Like Bradley Cooper was in it, and remember he played a chef in a movie. I forget the name of the movie. Stuff like that. They have a lot of surprising amount of guest stars.
Yeah.
This season, Io directed an episode herself, which is kind of effectively her backstory, the character's backstory. Uh,
Mm,
Stuff like that. It begin get into it. I really like the show. I can't say I super love the show, but I like the show.
yeah.
But what it does well is just the character stuff with respect to the idea of stress mixed with intelligence and how do you all of you know the downsides to that because when you know the main characters his character's backstory what happened to his brother so on and so on and so forth that all of that is just coming together. It's a surprisingly interesting metatextual show about the nature of cooking and what the subtext of all of that is in terms of emotional and how to deal with a professional space and blah blah blah. But yeah, go ahead.
And as I see that too, there's always this idea of perfectionism
You're right.
when it comes to the characters in the show, especially the ones who are chefs and whatnot, right? It's this idea of okay, I need to make this particular dish perfect, like 100%, and if it doesn't look perfect or if it looks or smells bad, they're not even gonna like okay, like like the I'm not dissing anybody, but like the average chef that just giving it to the customer and say, look, hold that. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, if the customer gets sick or like food poisoning or whatever, that's on them. Well, sorry. Well, I mean, they wouldn't take the blame, right, or something like that. But like when it comes to them, now when it comes to chefs in this show, no, they will throw that shit in the garbage and do that shit again. That's how it is, right? especially when it comes to Carmen. But he's a guy who
Right.
is all about perfectionism, right? And you understand why when you see various allusions to his backstory and whatnot, right? Which this
Right.
season does quite a lot, and I'll talk about that in my review of it, right? So in the last episode of season 2, right? The bear itself, right? Because what happened in the season 2, it was basically this whole rebranding thing, right? From this, basically this rebranding from the beef, which was the restaurant that was inherited from their father. That would be Carmen and his older brother Mike, who is played by Shane Main, right? Yeah, he was
Yeah.
he was in it as well too, right? Yeah, yeah. So it becomes the bear, right? Which is the title of the show. And then also too, and I didn't even think about it like a recap the second season. Yeah, it's in relation to their surname, right? Bozzato, right? Because
Yeah.
they're Italian American, right? So yeah, Carmen finds himself is stressed as hell, right? On the first night, right? So everything running smooth and whatnot. But then they set up something earlier on where there was this fridge door that needed fixing, and he finds himself locked inside there, right?
Right.
By the same time, prior to all that, he rekindled this flame with this, rekindled the flame, basically, rekindled this relationship with an old flame, sorry, by the name of Claire, right? But that sort of falls apart too because while he is in that fridge, just stressing and cursing out, he's just talking to himself, right? He's basically saying that he doesn't deserve any happiness, you know what I mean? And anybody who wants to make him happy is just like, what, it doesn't even matter, forget it. Like I am doomed to be miserable all my life, right? And yeah, Claire hears this and she's like, what, I'm done and I'm going, right? And even prior to all that too, he has an argument with his cousin, Richie, who's played by Ebon Moss Baccarat.
Yeah. The
Baccarat,
new
right?
Ben Grimm. Yeah.
Yeah, the new Ben Grimm, right? And yeah, there's always this thing where Richie is always called Carmen cousin. Yeah, cousin, cousin,
Yeah.
cousin. I like that, right? Yeah, so they had a falling out on that same night too. And when the season kicks off, yeah, they're still not seeing eye to eye at all, right? So the business, for what it's worth, is running smooth, right? But because of that night, that opening night being, a failure in Carmen's eyes, yeah, he is just holding on to that stress, right? So in addition to that, there's the whole thing with Claire, and he wants to make it up to Claire, but like he's almost scared actually to call her, right? At the same time, he's concerned about ratings, right? And the set is up in season 2. He wants star ratings, right?
Right.
And we're not talking
Michelin
about like
star ratings. Yeah.
yeah, Michelin star ratings, right? So like the top chefs, he's looking out for articles related to the beer and whatnot. So is that right? While all this is going on too, his older sister, Natalie or Sugar, who's played by Abby Elliott, she's pregnant and she going
Right.
through
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
drama as
I forget she
well.
in this. Yeah.
Yeah. Sydney herself, she going through drama as well too because they set that up in the final episode of the last season as well too. Yeah, she is dealing with stress just as much as Carmen does, right? And at the same time, she's trying to take care of her father, who is played by Robert Townsend. But then something happens in this season here where she runs into an old friend who used to work for a particular restaurant, which Carmen used to. He was like a temporary chef there for a while, but then he
Yeah.
left. And that one was run by Olivia Colman, Oscar winner. I was like, hey, I forget he was in this too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and surprise, surprise, that particular restaurant, I think it's called the Ever, I think it is. Yeah, it's closed. Well, it was about to close, right? So you see how these characters feel about that, right? Um, so yeah, Natalie's going through her own thing. Tina, who's like the old I think she's like the oldest cook there. Well, one of the two oldest there, right? Okay, there's this African immigrant guy who is there, but we don't really see much of him in the season, unfortunately, right? But yeah, the other one, Tina, right? Who is played by Lisa Colon Zayas. Yeah, she kind of just dealing with things as is, right? But she actually gets her own little episode, and this is the one that's directed by Ao, where
Yeah.
you see her how she started working in the beef slash the beer in the first place. It's actually one of the best episodes in the season bar none, right? But back to Sydney, right? So she runs into this old friend and he wants to start his own business and he wants her to come in as a business partner, and she's like not too sure. Cause on the one hand, she wants to, because she and Carmen have this bond, right? Like this business relationship, right? And she wants to make this thing work because she feels like she owes it to her father, you know what I mean? Because the father's like, you know what, if you're not satisfied, move on, do something else. But it's like, no, like I don't want to do anything else, right? But she's just wrestling with all this doubt as well, too, right? One I should mention too, there is Marcus, even though you don't see much of him in this show, who's played by Lionel Boyce. He is dealing with the loss of his mom, which they actually set up in the final episode of the last season as well, too, right?
Right.
Yeah, long story short, it is just basically about these characters who are dealing with their own internal stresses and doubts and whatnot, but they trying to keep it civil, they're trying to keep it professional while they're working at the beef at the bear, sorry. But at the same time, the one who owns the bear now, you know, Carmen, is dealing with his own drama as well too. You know, he wants things to be perfect. You know, he doesn't want he doesn't want a repeat of what happened, you know, in the opening night, right? But because he's just dealing with so much internal stress, I should also mention too, one of the triggers involves like just pretty much being humiliated though on a repeated basis by a chef that he used to work with, right? Who was played by Joel McHale, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at this
Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah.
this restaurant back in New York. Yeah, you just see how all of this sort of like boiling up inside of him, right? And then you just see how it sort of explodes, kind of. You know what I mean? At the very end of the season. So yeah, that's pretty much my take on what went down with season 3 of The Bear. But before I get to my thoughts on this season here, yeah, Ricardo, your thoughts on season 3?
Um, Not as good as the previous two. A little meandering. It
Agreed.
works.
Uh-huh.
It works on a character level for the most part, but and then it kind of feels like the guest star and stuff kind of getting a little too out of hand now. Too much. You feel like a little bit like a crutch, but still good. Like it's
Boy,
still
on the subject of that though, when I see a certain person, we're not gonna see who it is. When I see a certain person show up, I was like, look,
yeah.
all right,
Yeah,
he
a little
okay,
overdoing it.
clearly he have time, he have nothing to do. But wow, boy, like talk about heavy hitters, boy, like him, really. Although
Right.
when he show up, he do his thing, and he was kind of funny, right? But I was like, wow, boy, FX spend real money to get he to be on the show, like wow.
Hmm.
But yeah, sorry.
Right. I mean, it didn't bother me too much. Like it, I get it. I get why they doing they had so many like the guest starting, but the guest starting before was felt like kind of natural and workable. No, this time is like, you sure we doing this? All right, you know, yeah, whatever. It's not a problem, but yeah, meandering, little artsy. People like it as that. I can see people liking that, but this time it lacked. I don't know what make the first season in particular from since first season work is that energy of yes, the manic nature of it now. But then because the mood change and whatever, there's a change with that. So I get what they're going for. But I can live with that. So it's fine. But yeah, as I can't good conscience say I like it as much as the previous season. But still good.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Especially in terms of meandering, right? Because yeah, I mean, one thing the show nails very well though is just how characters sort of reflect on instances, you know, moments that make them happy or particularly angry or sad, right? But I felt like they just did a little too much of it in this season here, right? So just to get out of the way, where I felt what I felt could have really improved this particular season though was yeah, just a shorter amount of episodes, right?
Right.
They just had to stick with the 10 season 2, but I felt they could have just drawn it down, just cut it down to 8, man, because yeah, there was just moments that admittedly just sort of dragged, moments that just sort of repeat themselves. And I understand, you know, thematically, okay, you know, when a character is being stressed out, they go back to this instance or they go back to what this person say about them and all that kind of stuff. But there were moments where it just felt quite repetitive, right? Um, as far as the artsy vibe of it too, I do admire and applaud the fact that they took creative risks here. But
Yeah.
at times it was just like, you know, you could kind of do this in a little shorter fashion, right? So case in point, there is all right. So in the last episode, the season finale of season 2, right? When we have this moment where Carmen is locked in the fridge and he's reflecting, right? There's this particular song that plays, right? This dark ambient song, right? I believe it's
Right.
done by Resna and Russ, you know me, who does the shit they could literally do it in their sleep, right?
Right.
And it just plays for like about, let me just say, for like a huge chunk of the episode, right? But it works, right? Because it's just sort of building this sort of tension, and you just really feel how Carmen is feeling at this moment, right? To take that now and put it into the season premiere of this season here now, and basically stretch the whole episode like that, and have the
Yeah.
same song playing throughout, and have everything just be reflections on Carmen and how he's feeling, right? it's a little too much. It's a little bit
Yeah.
like, all right, we get it, but dog, you give him a 40 minutes of this shit. Like, come on, like wrap it up, right? And
Hmm.
that's exactly what we get, right? Now, to the show's credit, I do like that certain teams are introduced here, right? Certain shots are introduced here, and they come back later on, especially in the finale, which I was really enjoying up to a certain point, right? I'll get to that point just now, right? But yeah, I like how certain things come back, right? But again, in just watching this, like, okay, I get it, all right, but it can kind of tell the story, and the story itself doesn't really even begin till episode 2, right? Where you actually see, oh, the bear is in business now, and we doing we thing. But we just had to have a first episode establishing why Carmen is stressed out. But it's just a lot to take in, right?
Right.
Thematically and emotionally, right? They really could have trimmed it down, right? But still, though, I mean, the quality is still there when it comes to the characterization, when it comes to the direction, when it comes to the editing. Like as I mentioned, the show has some of the best editing I've seen in a while, though, and it's just more emotionally driven. You know, when characters are stressed out, when they're thinking and reflecting, or when they're just about to, when they're about to melt down, basically, yeah, we just have this rapid fire editing, and it works. It totally works, right? But yeah, I mean, just from a technical perspective, the show still fires on all cylinders. The Neil drops as well to totally work in terms of just
Yeah.
setting the tone of the scenes and whatnot. Of course, I mean the acting, everybody doing their thing. Even though, like, yes, you say there's some cameos that show some guest stars. I was like, all right, okay, aren't you? Because especially with that
I
one
forget was
though,
the last show that
it's
did that,
kind of
and it was like
distracting, you know.
distracting. I forget which show that was. I did had a ton of cameos, and just like after a while, it get real distracted. I forget what it was. But it's like,
What
yeah.
was it a drama or was it something else?
I think it was a drama. It wasn't a comedy. It was a
Okay,
drama. If it
yeah.
was a comedy, it was like whatever, But I can't remember. It's slipping my mind right now.
Yeah, but that one was really distracting. Even though it was kind of surreal and kind of funny at the same time, seeing that actor be in the show,
Hmm.
right? But but you do get some great character moments, right? So, like, case in point, I do love episode 6. This involves Tina's backstory, how she
Yeah.
becomes a part of the crew of the bear, which is directed by Eo, right? It
Hmm.
was so relatable though, in terms
Yeah.
of like the struggle and whatnot, just basically trying to find a job, especially at her age, because she's in the mid 40s at this point in time, right? Also points for having her real life husband, David Zayas, play her husband, right? If you
Okay.
remember him, he was in Dexter. He played Angel Batista. Like when I saw the face, I was like, I know you, right. But I didn't know till after the fact that they were together, like they were married. I didn't know that, right? But yeah, when they were together on screen is great. The story is so relatable. I love how it ends basically with her meeting Mikey, played by Shane Man, right?
Yeah.
Also, I like how John Berntal, right? For those who don't know. I like how he's worked into the story, especially when it comes to, again, just Carmen, just dealing with all the stress and all that kind of stuff, right? Although a part of me still wishes that we got to see how, spoiler alert, Mikey dies. All we just
Right.
saw was just a funeral, but that was it. And I was like, all
Right.
right, but
No,
I
like,
hope,
yeah, I didn't expect him to do all of that with it. So it's like,
yeah.
nah,
But
you don't go
no,
all that.
I mean, because it's the third season and they go in a little bit more in depth. Like I thought, oh, you will see what really went down and this and that and
Right.
third,
Right.
right?
Right.
But they didn't really do that with him, unfortunately, right? Surprise, surprise. Jamie Lee Curtis returns. Oscar
Right.
winner again. Because yeah, she appeared in what was, in my opinion, the best episode of season 2, right? Which was Fishes, right? Again, episode 6, right? Which will go down as one of the most brutal um Christmas episodes of a TV show I will ever see. Just
Right.
the meltdown she goes through, just everything, and just how they build the stress there and where how it ends. Way it's like, wow, boy, that was rough, right? How she was worked into the story, really, how she's worked into the season. I'm not gonna spoil, but it caught me by surprise. But it really made for a really, like, surprisingly, like, warm and affectionate sorry, I should say heartfelt episode, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it totally worked, right? But they didn't really do much with her after that, unfortunately, and it kind of stopped things at a certain point, right? Which leads to my biggest issue with the season here. I was real enjoying the final episode, the finale, right? I love how they was building things up, how they was kind of reintroducing certain teams that was set up from the first episode, and how they were just the payoffs, right? One in particular involving Carmen's old boss, right? Played by Joe McHale. How that played out was great. When he met with Olivia Colman's character, that was great, right? But then we get to the ending, right? And I'm just gonna mention just one slight spoiler. I'm not gonna say what happens around this moment, but I'm just gonna say what happens. They say to be continued.
Right.
I was like, but
Yeah.
but why though? Like you lead us on this 10 episode run, and then just come and say, yeah, to be continued.
Right.
So here's the thing, right? So just as we wrap up here. So I'm assuming that the following season, maybe the last one,
Right.
because for them
It's a
to
good
give
place
me
to end it,
10
to be
episodes,
fair.
yeah, for them to give me 10 episodes and say to be continued, it's like, nah, next one clearly is the last. Clearly last, right? Um, but then that brings up a kind of issue I know people have with the show, especially with the season here. You're seeing a lot, but like we heard it before, we've seen it before, but like it's almost like you're spinning your wheels, like you almost don't have anything to see again, right? I could see that being a criticism of the season here. It's just the
Right.
usual. It's all about mental health and perfectionism and stress
Yeah, it,
and
it, it have the
blah.
same, not as extreme, but
But
it have the same problem that say Westworld has now, where once you pass a conceit, you have to figure out what to talk about next. And after 2 seasons, it's like, well, in my humble opinion, indicates that Westworld after 1 season. Uh, you cover the premise, so it's like, well, what you're gonna do to evolve the premise in a smart way, and they never really. That's the problem with the show is that the show already passes through that emotional, well, for lack of a better term, crucible, with respect to that, and they don't know how to go past it. No. And sure, I'll always bring up to that understood how to go past it or to evolve the conceit. BoJack Horseman, right? In terms of emotional payoff and pain. This don't really know how to do that because it's a hard stress kind of thing. I'm not sure. Like I know people defending this third season, and I understand why it would, but it, yeah, as you say, it kind of spinning its wheels in that sense. Now, and I think it needs to wrap up in season 4. To be honest, I can't see like where they gonna go after. Like I don't know where they want to go, and I have no sense of how we're gonna tell. However, to me, 4 should be like a coda to this. Like don't go. I don't know what they're gonna invent to come up to go further in terms of the material. Yeah, that's the story. However, we'll see.
yeah, well. For me, no, I agree with you, but I feel, well, for me, another reason why that's kind of disappointing when you think about it too, is because in the last season, the bear itself, as in the restaurant, as in the
Right,
establishment that the show is based on, has officially started, right? And
right.
now we now reaching to a point where, okay, maybe it might come to an end, or maybe the show itself. Cause like I just thinking mentally that there could be a couple more seasons in its run. Like we could kind of give another challenge to the business, to the establishment, and
That's the
kind of set
problem. Is
something
that
up
to
here
me?
where it's like, okay, they need to meet this certain quota, and if they don't, well, Oliver Platt's character, that would be Carmen's uncle, would just sort of pull the plug, and he would just stop sponsoring them. But like even that
Right.
itself doesn't even get rectified. It just sort of stops again with the too big to be continued here
Well,
now.
that's well. I don't know. That's how I kind of see it. Like the problem in itself is that, well, the arc, the story is the bear itself. That's just the arc. Like it has nothing to do with the restaurant necessarily. Is how you tell the story. Like what you're talking about or where you want to go with it. And to me, if the whole thing is just this emotional struggle to get to the point of the restaurant, then it don't need to be about the restaurant necessarily. Like it's just the establishment of the restaurant is the story and the emotional stakes that have to go into that and what they have to go through just to get to that point. I don't know. Like that's how I see it.
Yeah,
But
I
we'll
understand.
find out.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
you, right? But yeah,
Hmm.
you know what I mean. Again, just giving us 10 episodes and just telling us to be continued is like, nah,
Yeah.
man, don't do we that, right? So what I felt though, like going back to season 1, they could have just given us 8 episodes and then do the HBO thing, or just to give a new example, do like what Netflix is doing with their final season of Cobra Kai. Split the
Right.
season into 2. Give them
Right. Right. Right.
give
Right.
us
Right.
like 6 episodes first, and then give me the other 6 next year. You know what I mean? Like we will wait, right? So something like that. Instead of just stretching things out. And for me, this really was how this season felt like. Like it was just stretching its conceits out,
Yeah.
stretching
I mean,
out, the
it's
tension and
I
everything.
get it. I get it in terms of like giving characters a backstory and you need to give like other people things. So like like could you have done what's your name? AO's full backstory? That was that necessary? Like grand story wise, probably not. I can imagine, but character wise, definitely. Like you need to have give
Oh,
somebody
you mean?
something.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean Tina? Tina?
Tina, sorry, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. Saying AO, but sorry, yeah, Tina. Uh, but yeah, it's that right? I don't know. I mean, you know, is he showing an anime problem, right? Showing an anime have a whole stretch out its material way too long, but it's because it has so many characters, you need to give them a thing, and then you can move on, kind of thing. I don't know. Is that?
Yeah,
That's all I
and and,
think
and
about.
and speaking of that though, like for me, there was a couple of characters that I felt still haven't been explored. Like
Right.
this black guy, for example, I forgot his name.
With the
He
pastry
just
chef,
they No, there's a younger black man, and then there's a older, the same African immigrant guy. Like I felt those two in particular could have been explored more because I usually see them more in the background. They get lines or whatnot, but they don't really have much to do, right? So it's Ibrahim, that's the Somali guy, the cook, right?
right.
And then we have Gary, right, who is the sommelier. There's a point where he mentioned that he was playing baseball and some kind of accident or some kind of thing happened with him. So that was really it. Like I felt we could have like seen them now, but like people like Tina and Sugar and them, these being in the front all the time. But we could have seen a couple more people in the back as well, right? Um, and then of course, the Fact brothers are there, you know what I mean? And they're just goofy and smart talking. So they do what they do and they help keep the show light, right? Because yeah, it's a lot of like dark, heavy subject matter, but they bring the humor into the show as well, right? But yeah, ultimately this just felt like for me, I just felt like this season should have been shorter. If the idea was it was if the plan was that they were going to have a to be continued, right? But even if they didn't want to split the season up, they still could have made things shorter, right? Because I felt like the points, or at least the what they were leading up to, right? So like case in point, Carmen meeting up with his former boss after years, right? Yeah, we could have gotten to that so quickly, man. We didn't have to wait
Yeah.
like 9 episodes to get to that point, you know what I mean? And still tell you to be continued. Like, come on, right? So yeah, again, at the end of the day, quality is still there. I mean, acting wise,
Yeah, it's
directing
still head
is
and
still
shoulders above
strong, right?
most things that
Yes.
in my orbit. So like it's not like wait, this is real trash now, but yeah, it dropped a little bit. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the boys or something like that. The season three of the boys wasn't as good as two, but it's still good. Right,
yeah,
it's still good.
exactly. And just to wrap things up, and I was hearing through the grapevine, like as soon as this season dropped, I saw a couple of reviews saying, "Oh, this is a step down from season two." And I was like, "Oh boy." Well,
Yeah,
while I was
yeah.
watching the show, I was like, I wonder why, boy. But then, admittedly, while I was watching, I was like, all right, like, why does not rope him in so much? Like, yes, it have characters that I love, and I love any dialogue and the natural vibe of it too, and everything, right? But it's just not holding him in, though. And I realize it's just, again, it just sort of feels repeated. It just feels like, okay, all right, stress, okay, perfectionism, yes. Life sucks, okay. Businesses, crumble, all right, okay, 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 okay. We've seen this before, right? But I felt like, for one thing, they could have done something a little bit different, right, thematically, and still stick to the core teams and whatnot, right? Because yeah, at the end of the day, all the stuff that I mentioned before, that's the bear. It's kind of depressing, but that's the bear. That's the show, right? But it's just how the characters deal with this depression, how they move forward. That's what makes the show so endearing, right? But yeah, at
Right.
this point, I just felt we could have got more progression in terms of the characters, right? Like I'll just throw one last point and then we'll move on, right? This whole situation with Claire and Carmen haven't even been resolved. I did
Right.
like 10 episodes.
Again,
I did like they're gonna
to be
resolve it.
continued
Nope,
thing.
to be
It didn't
continued.
bother me,
Come
but
on.
yeah, it's our next year. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, boy, it's
Yeah, I
like
know.
that
Yeah.
though. So they was
Yeah.
really stretching things out a little too long, right? But that's not to say that the show, isn't the show is like terrible. No, it's not like that, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, for me, rating wise, I'm still gonna give this a strong 3.5 to like 4 to 5, right? It's worth checking out.
Right.
I strongly, strongly recommend it to recap season two. It's a good thing I did because I was able to be like, oh, this character and this motivation. All right, all right. It was able to piece together certain things a little quicker, right? And notice certain motifs and whatnot, right? But still, and of course, if you're a fan, you will in some way, shape, or form enjoy the season, right? But yeah, 10 episodes was felt way too much though. It just felt kind of, sluggish though. You know what I mean? Like I just felt
Right.
they could have just tightened things up, gotten to the points quickly, told this whole story, even if it's a to be continued in 8 episodes or less, you know what I mean? And it would have just been a much tighter and just a much more satisfying season. But this one, yeah, it was a step down. But thankfully, the quality is still there. So at least I'm happy for that. So, Ricardo, your final thoughts on it?
Yeah. I mean, like I was watching it and I was like, everybody gone bitch about, it's not as good as this and not as good as thing. And yeah, I agree. But like I will say is that, as you say, it is one of those necessary, for lack of a better term, necessary evils. It's shown an anime problem. On the one end, it doesn't seem necessary, but the character stuff is good anyway, so it shouldn't really matter. And that's why I didn't bother me as long as it was. It's just I felt it's not that they had to cut stuff, but they probably could have resolved stuff faster. I'm not sure. Like we'll see it with the last season, but I do think next season should be the last season, in my humble opinion. As I said, I always have my hard rule of 4 to 6, shouldn't go beyond 6. 7 is stretching it, but like 4, like where the nature of the show, the intensity of the show. This was always a show that just bright, that had a burn bright and go out early. Is one of that. So I want to see it just do that. Just give me a nice solid 4th season, something like how Halt and Catch Fire was, just in and out, and don't waste too much time on this. So I really hope we don't get too much after. I don't want to I don't see how they can make us a 5th season working. Like it'll just be too much. But whatever, we'll find out with where they're going with the character arc and thing. But to me, everything is all the questions are asked already. So it's just to have these answers and then resolve them. So it's that. Yeah. The rating, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot actually. Like last season was like 8 out of 10 for me, or yeah, this one about an 8 out of 10 as well. It's just gotta understand why they stretched it out, but I still didn't like it as much as last season. But I get it. I get why they made the decisions they did. So yeah, still an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Also, just before we move on, right? Just a thought I had while I was watching the season here, right? Whenever the show ends, right, and it comes out in a box set, they have to include a menu in it. They have to include okay, but it has to be like specific dishes from certain episodes or certain scenes. So like hardcore beer fans be like, I remember this dish because that was what Carmen make, and this is what Sydney make and Marcus make when this thing happened, blah 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 blah, something like that. Now, but I think it'll be cool now. I mean, I'm not, I'm not expecting the showrunners of the beer to be listening to this podcast, right? But yeah, you know what I mean? Like just have a menu thread, you know what I mean? So yeah, just have a menu. So folks like us, you know what I mean, who, don't go to establishments like that on a regular basis, can actually make these dishes at home now, you know what I mean? That kind of shit. I mean, but yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean the beer season 3, slight step down from the last season, but it's not like total trash or total garbage. But I do still, I still believe that this will still show up in people's best of. Like it's just one of those shows that even when the quality dips, people will still be like,
yeah,
but it still did this. It still had these great moments. It didn't lose a step, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think it'll still be in people's best of. And I'll just let you know one time, it'll be an honorable mention for me for sure. But I feel like when the new season comes up next year, hopefully I can recap this and be like, yeah, it was still a step down, but it wasn't as bad as people made it out when it came out, right? Something like that.
Right.
I think that just all goes to show it how high people expectations were, right? Because remember, like I said, this is like one of the most highly anticipated season drops of the year, right? Because because of the quality that the bear had. So I feel like, if it just take a step back or just like a step down, it's like a letdown for a whole bunch of people. But nah, man, like the quality is still there, man. So don't give up on the bear just like that. You know what I mean? And that's it.